Good evening, everyone from wherever you're watching us from. Karibuni sana. Thank you so much for choosing to join us this evening. My name is Precious Mothoni. I'm your moderator for tonight. I want us to feel very welcome this evening. Kindly just let us know where you're watching us from, and please share this link with your networks. Let them just join and also learn with us tonight. Feel free to share with as many as you can, and allow us to also, let them join us. So we are asking for just like 2 or 3 minutes to allow the rest who are joining to join us, even as we look to hear from our lawyer this evening, Lawyer Grace. She has a lot of insights from our first session last month, and now we are continuing on with the legal matters on land this particular evening. So feel free to just drop a chat, say where you're watching us from. Feel free to ask any questions, to comment. Maybe if you had joined us the previous time, you can comment and highlight on an observation you had previously, or something that maybe you have seen between the few days that we were away from each other. And in a few minutes, we will be together. Thank you very much once again. We truly value you. We value your time. We value you choosing Nyota Njema Real Estate. And feel free to just give us a few minutes to onboard the rest. Thank you as we wait for the rest in just a few minutes. Tony. Allowing our guests this evening to be able to enjoy one of our sessions that we had early in the year in the month of April. That was our title handover. We had an exquisite event that assisted us to showcase that we are a trustworthy company. We are a company that delivers on what we promise. We tell you we will give you your title once you're done with payment of your plot, and we deliver. That was one of our events right there. Thank you very much, the team in the house. I want to acknowledge all our guests that are already present. Thank you for taking your time to join us this evening. Thank you very much for the Nyota Njema team that is on board. You're doing a great job even taking care of our guests, and I pray that you will enjoy this moment and you will learn together with us, because we are also learning as our lawyer takes us through. So this evening, our lawyer had already covered a couple of questions in the previous session. Once again, I will just highlight on that. But this evening, I want to hand over, and what I will just do is just moderate. I'll ask some of the questions that you passed on to us the other time, and I will ask first and foremost that our lawyer will introduce herself, and then we will just delve into the questions right away. Grace, karibu sana, I see you're online. You're most welcome. Kindly just take over, introduce yourself, and then we can take it up from there. Lawyer Grace. Hello, Grace, can you hear me? Yes, even as she prepares herself, at Nyota Njema, we are an investment solution giving company, and we look forward to you getting your perfect investment solution, depending on your preference, depending on your need. We look to make sure that we have a solution for each and every one of us. And where we don't have a perfect one, we ensure that we look out for it until you're settled in your perfect investment. Investments include land, they include money markets. It's a diverse company, and we are always looking forward to you looking at a broader perspective of investing. Land is our primary investment area, but we do not overlook the fact that there are other investment options. And that's why we say at Nyota Njema, we light up your investment world. So even as we wait on Grace, we had covered quite a number of questions, legal matters, because there's so many questions that come up on the process of land, you know. And one of the many questions that even came up that I know our lawyer will handle tonight was, what are the legal factors to consider before buying land? Many people are kind of duped or just drawn away into buying land without understanding the whole aspect in the legal dimension of how to get to buy land. So that's among so many other questions that our lawyer will cover. We are looking forward to just having that moment. So I really want to welcome our lawyer this evening. Grace, if you can hear me. Madam Grace, if you can hear me, I'll appreciate you just introducing yourself and taking it up from what the legal factors are before buying land. Can you hear me, Grace?
Can you hear me?
In the meantime, keep sharing the link. Keep sharing, invite. Let as many as of your networks be enabled in this particular learning session altogether. We can be able to she's joining in just a few minutes. Let's just give her a few minutes. And please feel very, very welcome this evening. We have land across the country. We have land in Nanyuki. It is our prime area where we have a variety from 8-acre plots to acre plots, where you can be able to do your holiday home, you can be able to farm, you can be able to even put up a school, put up a hospital, put up a hotel. It's a tourist area. And once you have a development there, for sure your retirement is guaranteed. So we have Nanyuki, we have Naromoru, amongst so many other places I'd want us to share. But this time around, I want our lawyer Grace, if you can hear me, kindly just take it up, introduce yourself, and then you can take it up from the legal factors that we should consider as clients before buying land and the due diligence for acquiring that piece of land. Madam Grace.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you, Grace. We can hear you.
Hi, just clocking in. I was invited here by a friend, and I'm looking forward to learning more.
All right, all right. Yeah, you also call like our lawyer Grace. Our lawyer is called Grace. Yes,
Yeah.
you're most welcome,
That's
Grace, and we're looking forward to having a good time with you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. In the meantime, let us just go through our catalog. So I'll request our team, Tony, kindly just share our catalog so that our clients can actually, our VVIPs can actually see what we have on offer as we wait on Grace, our lawyer Grace, in just a few minutes, and then we get back. Thank you.
Precious, I don't know whether you can hear me.
Oh, karibu sana Grace. Thank you. Karibu.
All right. Sorry, I would like to welcome everybody to this session. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. My apologies, my gadgets seem to be failing me this evening, but I hope you'll be able to learn something. So I can take it up.
Sure, you can. Sure, you can. The first question actually you were just.
I can go ahead, Precious.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Go ahead.
Oh, all right. Some of the things that one would need to really be keen about, the legal factors to consider before and after buying land. And maybe this is mostly before buying land, because you see, once you have bought, you already have all the information that you need about whatever property you are buying. And it's not just land, it is land and any development that is on land. So whether you're buying an apartment, a house, a villa, or whether it's a block of flats, because sometimes you may want to even buy a block of flats as an investment. So the legal factors would more or less be the same in all those situations. So of course, the first and foremost is you want to establish what is this that you want to buy. Is it legit land? Have you satisfied yourself about who the owner of the property is? So of course, before you buy any land, of course you have to know where the property is. You have to go see the property. Don't allow yourself to be told about property which you have not seen, because you will find yourself buying air. So you need to first find out what is the location of this property. And the beauty of visiting the location of the property is, you see, you'll be able to see what amenities are in that area. You'll be able to see whether the property is next, say, to a railway station. Is it next to a road? Is it next to a sewer line? Is it next to a power line? Why do you want to consider such factors? Because you do not want to find yourself buying property that has encroached on any of those areas, or on the reserves, road reserves or railway reserve, or along the sewer line, or the reserve for any sewer line. So the first and most important thing is to see the property, so that you don't buy air and you don't buy property which has encroached on road reserve or land reserved for such other public purposes. And how would you know whether a property has encroached in such areas? That is where a surveyor comes in, because the surveyor is able to check for you what is the acreage of this property, what are the boundaries of this property, and also to check what are the boundaries of the neighboring facilities. So survey issue, and of course, even this survey issue is the legal issue, because you see, you are about to be identifiable. And how do you identify the property? You need to see the location of the property. You need to see the boundaries of the property. The seller of the property also needs to confirm to you where the boundary beacons are. If if the owner of the property does not show you where the boundary beacons are, you run the risk of getting into disputes with neighbors. You also want, after that, to know the ownership of the property. It is very important to meet the owner of the property. I know a lot of the times you will get to know about a property through a broker, but even where a broker is involved, as long as you have committed to pay the broker's commission, the next thing should be to meet the owner of the property, because sometimes you may be duped into buying property that belongs to a deceased person, and if you buy property that belongs to somebody who is deceased, you will find yourself in a lot of trouble. So you need to meet the owner, you need to get the identification documents of the owner. It is important to satisfy yourself that you are not dealing with somebody who is impersonifying somebody else, the real owner of the property. You want to know about the history of ownership of this property. And how do you get to know the history of ownership of the property? There are legal ways of knowing the history of ownership of a property by conducting a search. When you conduct a search on a property, depending on the registration regime of that land, you will be able to see either on the search, or you'll be able to see on the copy of title. There's some titles that give you the history of ownership, where you're able to tell who the first owner of the property was, the second, and all the subsequent owners. There are some other titles which only show the current title of the property. And when you do a search on such a property, you will only be able to know about the current owner of the property. So how do you know the history of ownership? That is where we do what we call a green card search. A green card search shows you the history of ownership of the property from the very first time when the register of the property was opened up to the point where you have the current owner of the property. You will also get to know about the history of ownership even by asking the neighbors. Whenever you go to buy property, if it is an site, when you ask neighbors, they can give you a lot of information. Neighbors are able to tell you who was the initial owner of this property or who was the previous owner of the property. Neighbors will tell you who are the family members. They will tell you whether there's a hidden wife somewhere who will come back later to claim ownership of that property. They will tell you whether there are fights among siblings. They will tell you whether the property was inherited and whether there were any issues with inheritance. So it is always important to involve not just the owner of the property, but even other parties, that if we can call them third parties. The neighbors would also be able to help you to identify the owner. For instance, when you meet somebody for the very first time and they tell you they're called Grace, how do you know that this is Grace? You know? But an independent party can identify this person and confirm that indeed you are speaking with Grace, and Grace is the owner of this property. The other legal factor or the legal aspect is the due diligence searches. And due diligence searches are not just what we do at the land registry, even getting to the ground to see the location of the land, to get to know the history of ownership of the land, to get to see whether the land is falls along a riparian reserve. That is still part of due diligence, but there's also the due diligence search, which we normally do at the land registry. So this involves an application that is submitted formally at the land registry. You make the relevant payment for getting an official search, the current owner of the property. A search will also reveal whether there are any encumbrances on the land. What do you mean by encumbrances? Anything that would hinder a subsequent transaction from happening. For instance, you may have a spouse who has registered a restriction on the property. The land may, or the property may also have been given to a bank or a financial institution to secure a loan. That is an encumbrance. There could be a neighbor who is claiming ownership of that land, or an interest purchaser, or any other interested party may register a caution on the property. And that is a clear indication that that's a property to avoid at all costs, because if you get into such a transaction, then you are really just inviting trouble to yourself. In any case, even the land registry will not register property which has a caution on it. I know in kwa lugha ya mtaa, people like to call it a caveat. So we are talking about the same thing. Basically, somebody has gone ahead to the land registry and said, do not allow any transaction to happen on this property because I have XYZ interest on this property. The other form of search which you also do is a search at the company's registry where the property is being sold by a company. It is very important to do a search at the company's registry. What will that help you to, how will that be helpful? You'll be able to know who are the directors and the shareholders of this company. When you do a search on a company and you see the shareholders and directors, some companies are owned by people you do not want to be associated with, or people who have history of conning people. So when you have such information, you are able to make an informed decision. The other reason why you want to do a search on a company is so that when the documents finally come, say the sale agreement or the transfer, and you look at the parties who have signed on behalf of the company, you'll be able to tell whether it's the true directors of the company who have signed. And why do you want to do a search on land? You know, a search will normally reveal who the true owner of the land is. You'll get to know the directors of a company, like I have said. You will get to know whether there's an encumbrance. For instance, we have said if a loan has been taken and there's a charge registered by a bank, whether there's a caution or a caveat, as is commonly called, or whether there's a restriction. A restriction is basically somebody saying, telling the land register, don't allow any transaction to happen on this land without my knowledge. Then a search will also reveal the acreage on the property. You also get to know the history of ownership of the land. If land, say, was bought from some funny politician who has history of grabbing land, and you see their name as part of the previous owners, you will want to run away because you do not want to inherit trouble. We have talked about getting to know about the neighboring facilities when we were talking about visiting the location of the land, because that will help you to determine whether this is property that is worth investing in, or whether it is property that can bring you trouble in future, in the sense that if you will have encroached on a sewer line, railway line, road reserve, or such kind of facilities, that will be able to tell, will help you to make an informed decision. The other legal factor which you need to consider is authenticity of the documents that have been presented to you. Let me give an example. You are buying property from a family, and this family tells you that they inherited the property, say, from their late dad. Some of the documents which you need to ask is the court documents for the succession case. In our previous session, I think I talked about succession, which is basically the legal process which you go through to be able to share out the assets or properties owned by a deceased person. So say you are buying property from this family and they tell you that they have gone through succession. You don't just go ahead and do your transfer. If you have engaged a good advocate, they will advise you to do a file perusal of the court file so that you are able to find out, is this grant, which they have given, grant of letters of administration of the certificate of confirmation of grant, are they authentic documents? When you peruse the court file which relates to the succession matter, you'll be able to tell, did these people do succession? Were there disagreements when the succession process was going on? How was the property subdivided? Because again, somebody can give you a fake certificate of confirmation of grant. You also want to find out if there was a will that was left by this deceased person, was it contested in court, or were the parties all in agreement? When you peruse a court file, you'll be able to get all this information. You also want to check the previous, you can ask, when you ask for the previous transfer, if this person does not have, or better still, the transfer which they registered when they're buying the property, if they don't have, that's a red flag. Because if you have bought property, a registered transfer is one of the very important things. Say you are buying property from a company, and or rather from somebody who is a shareholder in a company, and they give you a share certificate, you should be able to go to that company and do a verification as to whether that share certificate was issued by the company and whether it actually belongs to this person who is selling the property from, who is selling the property to you. You may also want to check if you are able to dig deeper into the history of ownership of property, for instance, the people who have some parcels of land that were issued, say, by the county government of Kiambu, you can take the letter of allotment that was issued to this person, to the county government, to verify whether that letter of allotment was actually issued by the county government. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that when it comes to doing due diligence searches, due diligence can be broad depending on the property that you're buying, and it can also be a bit narrow, but it is always important to make sure that you has been involved before. If it is somebody who has bought from a family that was doing succession, you want to find out, did this person register their interest with the court? For instance, say let me give an example. Precious, let's say she has bought land from a family that is going through succession. What ideally should happen is during the succession process, Precious is supposed to be entered in the records as a beneficiary of the estate by virtue of the sale agreement between herself and that family over the parcel of land. If you're buying property in such a situation and there's no such agreement, and the person who is selling to is not listed as a beneficiary in the succession matter, then you want to be very careful. Sometimes it is also good to do due diligence even on the advocate that you're dealing with, say the advocate who is representing you, and even the advocate who is representing the seller of the property. Why? Because we also have people who are masquerading as advocates and they're not advocates. All they're doing is conning people around. So you want to be sure that you're dealing with legit people. It is possible to get the details of an advocate if you write to LSK. LSK will be able to provide you with details of the advocate and confirm to you whether you are dealing with a qualified and a licensed advocate. Sometimes in the course of transacting, we are brought for IDs and PIN numbers that are just fishy. It is possible to go through the iTax page and check whether a PIN certificate is authentic. It is also possible to check the authenticity of an ID by writing to the Kenya Bureau of Registration of Persons. They will be able to provide you with information about it's called the National Registration Bureau, which registers people, and that's where the records of IDs are contained. So you'll be able to get information as to whether an ID which has been provided to you is authentic or not authentic. You also want to consider land taxes. What do I mean by land taxes? Remember, there are some parcels of land or houses which attract land rent and land rate. In our previous conversation, I talked about land rent is payable to the national government. Land rates will ordinarily be, or rather at a copy of title that actually is payable for leasehold properties. In a property which is a 99-year lease, 60-year lease, 50-year lease, when you look at the first page of the title, you'll be able to tell how much land rent is payable to the national government. However, by looking at a title, you'll not be able to know whether that property attracts land rates, whether it attracts land rates or not. So how do you determine? You take your copy of title, go to the relevant county government office or sub-county and ask them to check in their records whether that property attracts land rates. Just give me a minute, I take some water.
Thank you, Grace. We are learning, and I see questions are coming up. And thank you. It shows that we are actually keen. Thank you, Grace. Keep sending your questions. I'm sure someone in our team will keep engaging us as Grace goes on.
So yeah, so assuming you are buying property that is situated in, say, Ruiru. If you're buying property in Ruiru, the land rates are payable either at the Juja sub-county office or in Ruiru sub-county. Why? Because there are certain areas in Ruiru, the ones very close to Juja farm, where land rates will ordinarily be payable at the Juja sub-county office. If you are somewhere, Kamaki's area, Rural town, and its environs, then land rates for that area would be payable in rural. I'm just giving this as an example. So when you get into a transaction for sale of land, you need to find out from the relevant sub-county office whether that property attracts land rates. But the general rule is this: property in an urban area attracts land rates. So that's what you always have to have in mind. And if you're buying property in Kiambu County, the whole of Kiambu County attracts land rates, other than some part of Deya, which is still under a settlement scheme. So the general rule, if you're buying land in an urban area, just know that it attracts land rates. So you want to find out, has the owner of this property been paying land rates? Because if you don't do that, then you are going to inherit their debts. The other one is, of course, the other legal factor is getting into a sale agreement. You should not get into a transaction for sale of land or for purchase of land without a sale agreement, because even the law requires that any transaction involving land or development on land should be in writing. So it will not be an oral contract, it's going to be a written contract. So always have that in mind. What are the things that you need to avoid? These are still legal factors. I have talked about buying property from that belongs to a deceased person. Don't buy that before the family has done succession formalities. And if you buy property from somebody and this person dies before you do the official transfer, then make sure that in the succession process, you are also included as a beneficiary of that estate by virtue of having gotten into a sale agreement with this person. Avoid buying land near rivers. We have all seen what happened with the properties near riparian reserves. If you are buying land that has a leasehold interest, I know a lot of people call them leases. If you're buying land that has a leasehold interest, always check what is the remaining term of the lease. For instance, if this person has a parcel of land in Westlands and a huge part of Westlands consists of 50-year leases and the remaining term is 10 years, what are you doing to yourself? You are going to buy property whose term will expire even before you have enjoyed the property. So always have that in mind, that if you're buying leasehold property, then ensure that the remaining term of the lease is quite reasonable. Yeah, so we could move to the next question. I believe I have covered quite a bit.
You have exhausted it completely, very well. Thank you. I will quickly read the next one. How do we locate a piece of land with an existing title deed, and what are the legal requirements and the charges to be charged for the process?
Okay. I hope I do understand that question correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking we have somebody has title for that property, but you don't know where that land is. It is possible to locate a parcel of land. If you don't know where exactly it is possible, as long as you know the title number of this property. And what do? You engage a surveyor. Surveyors are the professionals who have been trained how to identify property. So what will the surveyor do? The surveyor will take your title, go to the relevant, call it a registry index map. So they will buy a map for, say, if your property is, say, in Naivasha, they will buy a map for the Naivasha area. And it doesn't have to be the whole of Naivasha, because the map for Naivasha is very huge. So just by looking at the title number, when you go to the survey records office and you give them the title number for your property, they are able to get for you a map for that area. And so the surveyor will be able to trace the property. What they do, they usually start from a certain point. For instance, they may want to start taking directions from a landmark, like say a school. Yeah, so from the school, they will just do their measurements, whatever it is that they do. I will call them measurements loosely because I don't know what term they use. I'm not a surveyor. So from that point, they are able to identify your property. Actually, if you sent a surveyor to do the survey to, say, if you're buying property and you want to know the acreage, you don't have to take the surveyor where the property is. You only need to give them the title number. When they look at the title number, they know where to get the map from. And once they have the map for the area, they are able to go all the way until where your property is.
Awesome. Okay. I think that is well handled. How can someone, yes, so how can a client or someone certify the copy of a green card, and what's the importance? Do you provide a service, and how much does it cost? So how can a client get a certified copy of a green card, and what's the importance? And do you provide the service, and how much would it cost?
Okay. I would want to start by saying that the green card is, I can almost say it is the most important document in any. Why? Because the green card is what contains the history of ownership of land, especially where you are dealing with what you call RLA transactions or RLA title deeds. RLA title deeds are like the titles which you get when you buy land, say in Nanyuki, in Ruiru, in Thika, in Kiambu. Basically, if you buy property out of Nairobi, most likely you will get what you call an RLA title. RLA stands for Registered Land Act, and this is the kind of title which on the face is usually written title deed. So if you look at that kind of a title, it only shows the current owner of the property. So how do you get to know who was the previous owner and whom they bought from and who was the very initial owner? You do that by getting a green card. A green card is what contains the history of ownership, because when the register for that particular parcel of land is opened, the details are indicated on the green card. Actually, it is that green card that gives, it sort of gives, it births that particular parcel of land at the land registry. So the first entry will be put on the green card, and every subsequent entry will be put on the green card. So when we say that the green card is the most important document in land information and management system, it is because of that, because it contains all the pertinent information with regard to any registered parcel of land. A lot of the times, registries issue green cards to advocates because they want a formal application written by an advocate. You submit that application, you pay the relevant fees. It's usually 2,500 at the land registry. And then after some time, the green card will be issued. So what happens is you don't get the original green card. You get a certified true copy of the green card. It is important because it shows the history of ownership of the property. And do we provide that service? Yes, we provide. The cost, it depends on the extent of our engagement. A lot of the times we don't give the service of obtaining a green card on its own. What we do is we give it's part of our due diligences. We will do the usual official search, and we also do the green card search when we are doing a transaction. So if a client is interested in getting a green card search, they only need to get in touch with us. We will be able to advise on the cost depending on the extent of our involvement. If it is, if we are going to handle a whole transaction, then we incorporate it in the fee note for the whole transaction. If it is just the green card search, then we will charge according to the location of the property. For instance, getting a green card for property in Nanyuki will not be the same as getting a green card for property in say in Ruiru, because there's also the distance factor which you have to consider.
Thank you very much. I'll move on to the next question. I see our time is running really fast. since we'll be having longer sessions, but let's just handle the transfer of land title deeds across families. And what is the land succession process? What is required, especially when family members are having issues in regards to the land parcel?
Okay, so that sounds like 2 questions.
Yeah,
so we have yeah, the first one you have talked about land transfer process among family members.
Yes.
And then the other one is land transfer
the
process.
other one, the how to handle the issues in case there's an issue. How would you know, the land succession process? What is required, especially when family members are having issues?
Okay. You know, the beauty of succession is that it's a whole area that is governed by the law. And maybe we may want to start by saying that succession, you know, in the Kenyan setup, ladies never used to inherit properties from their fathers. But the law recognizes the boy child and the girl child as equal as far as succession is concerned. So they both have equal rights to inherit their parents' properties. And I also want to add this, you know, quarrels in families over succession can very well be a waste of time and resources. Why? Because you will fight and fight and fight, but you'll never change the law. If the law says ladies should inherit, they should inherit. The law says they inherit equally as the boy child. So stop the fights, agree as a family, and succession will be very simple. The moment families start fighting, what happens is you waste a lot of time, you waste a lot of resources on legal fees and court cases. And there's also animosity. So if a family is fighting before succession, I would advise first consider mediation. Mediate over that dispute. Talk about it over and over and over until you come to a place of peace among family members. After that, you can go ahead and do the succession process. Succession is very easy if there are no fights in the family. But the moment a family fights, it becomes so chaotic. We have heard about very prominent families who have been in court for over 30 years. Really, who has benefited in those 30 years? Is it not the lawyers? So families should try as much as possible not to fight when they are going through succession process. They should be able to agree, and they should seek the services of a good lawyer to even advise them. Yeah, because sometimes people fight because they don't have information. But the moment you have information, and especially the basic information that before the law, you are all equal, then you will stop the fights and do what? And follow the law success. Follow the due process provided in the law. So how do you do the succession process? People loosely say report knows, because even before you get that burial permit, there's a high likelihood that you will even be required to pass by the chief's office. So after, of course, everything has settled down, you visit the chief's office. The chief usually writes a certain letter, and you normally go with the original death certificate. So you'll get a letter that relates to the matter. The chief will normally confirm that this person hails from their area of jurisdiction, and from then you are able to start the succession process. So armed with a copy of the death certificate and the letter from the chief, you go to your advocate, and the advocate starts preparing the documents. You prepare a petition and the accompanying documents for the succession process. These documents will be signed by the beneficiaries. By beneficiaries, we mean if there's a spouse of the deceased person and children of the deceased person. Then the family will also need to get two non-beneficiaries who will act as the guarantors. Why? Because in the process of doing succession, you are required to get two independent people who will satisfy the court that they will ensure that the estate of this deceased person will be administered in the correct way. And this cannot be beneficiary out of the succession process or from the assets of the deceased person. And the guarantors can also be family members. You know, they can be uncles, aunties, or cousins, as long as they are not beneficiaries of the assets of the deceased person. Then after signing the document, the parties have signed the document. The documents are lodged at the relevant registry. We usually say you always start a case at the lowest possible court. When it comes to succession matters, it is the court that is nearest to where this person was living, or if the court is a bit far away, depending on the value of the estate of this person. So it is determined by, yes, where this person was living, and also the location of where the property is, and also the value of the property. That is why some succession matters will be started at the magistrate courts, but others will be started at a higher court because of the value of the estate of this person. So, and the general rule is that as long as the value of the estate is less than 20 meters, it's going to be lodged at the lower court. You know, we have hierarchy of courts. Then after the documents have been lodged for registration, there will be payment for gazettement. Gazettement, what we mean by gazettement is, in the documents for the succession process, the first step is usually to appoint the people who are going to be the personal representatives, and loosely, Kwamta, they are called administrators. So that is the first process. But you see, before person A and person B are appointed as administrators, you have to advertise that in the Gazette, the Kenya Gazette, so that if there's anybody who has an objection to that, they raise the objection. Sometimes people will file a succession matter without involving, say, their stepbrothers and their stepsisters, or maybe there's a second or third wife somewhere, and they're not aware that the succession process has started. So the purpose of the Gazette notice is to inform any interested party that a succession process has been started in respect of the estate of this deceased person. If you have any objection, please raise it before the expiry of the Gazette notice. So after appointment of the personal representatives, then you still wait for another 6 months before the court can now issue what you call the certificate of confirmation of grant. The certificate of confirmation of grant is the one that now gives the final division of the properties. So if this property had a car, this person had a car, or they had some shares here, they had a house there, they had land here. So the certificate of confirmation of grant is what will contain a breakdown of all these assets and how they are going to be shared among the parties. The timeline for the process can be as short as about 1 year, and as long as parties may want to the matter to stick in court. But where people are not fighting, the process should be able to be completed in about 1 year, 1.5 years. The other question was about transfer of properties among family members. I want to take it from that point. Remember, we are at the point where now the certificate of confirmation of grant has been issued, and now we are clear who is taking what. So what happens is, after that, the property is first transferred to the administrators, or personal representatives, as we call them in family law. So the property will go to the personal representatives, say if it is a mother and a son, or a son and a daughter who are the administrators in this case. So the property will first go to them, it will be registered in their name, and then from their names, it's going to be transferred to the respective parties. It is, however, possible to do both registrations at the same time. We do this by way of Form LR 39 and 42. So transfer to the personal representatives, Form LR 39, and to the beneficiaries, it's Form LR 30 or 42. So the Form 39 and 42 can be lodged at the same time. That is, transfer to the personal representatives and transfer from the personal representatives to the beneficiaries. They can be registered at the same time. And why do we transfer this property to the personal representatives? Because remember, say it is a property in Machakos, and it is in the name of, say, Benjamin Kariuki, and this Benjamin Kariuki is deceased, he will not be there to sign. So you have to transfer the property to the personal representatives so that they sign on behalf of the deceased person. So that is why we do the two transfers. And like I have said, we can do them simultaneously. If part of the property had been sold to a third party, you transfer to the personal representatives and transfer again from the personal representatives to the third party who had bought the property. And like I have said, even these two transfers can be lodged for registration at the same time. When property is being registered after a succession process, it is exempted from stamp duty, as long as the beneficiaries are the ones who are taking the property. But if this property is coming from the estate of the deceased person to a purchaser, then you have to pay stamp duty. So that is the first instance of transfer of property among family members. That is transfer of properties after a succession process. If say one person, this deceased person had one parcel of land of 5 acres and the person had 5 children, then what would happen is the property is transferred to the personal representatives and then it is subdivided. So you have to engage a surveyor at that process. The property is subdivided, and when it's subdivided, the 5 titles will come in the name of the personal representatives. Then the personal representatives, or the administrators as they're commonly called, will then transfer from themselves to the beneficiaries, to each of the 5 beneficiaries. So the third instance of transfer is where family members transfer property among themselves in their lifetime. For instance, a parent can decide to transfer the property to a child. We call that a gift in the lifetime of a person. So that takes the normal process and it attracts stamp duty. So you remember the transfer process which you talked about the last time we had a session? It will go through that similar process, only that now there will be no sale agreement. We will go directly to the transfer process. We will know how much stamp duty is payable, and stamp duty will have to be paid. If there is any land rates that has not been paid, it will need to be paid. We will do the stamping and registration, and then we will have the title in the name of now the new owner. From that process, again, we do an official search on the property, get a search, take it to the sub-county office for purposes of changing the land rates records. The other one is where a parent decides they want to transfer the property to a family company. Okay, a lot of such things are happening today, where parents say, okay, I own just this one parcel of land, but I want everybody to own it. So what do? You incorporate a family company and make all your children shareholders. So they own that parcel of land jointly, but through a company. The benefit of that is if anybody wants their share of the value of the property, the others can buy out this person and give them money. The other advantage of that also is it is possible now for this property to move from generation to generation, because what would happen is if one of the children passes away, or if they decide even in their lifetime, they only need to transfer the shares to their own children. So that is one way of managing family property. The other one is registering a trust. We have had prominent families registering trusts over their properties. And that is one way of managing private wealth, by registering a trust, where you are telling your family that I own this house, I own this land, I own these shares, but nobody will own .
Hello? Grace, we're losing you. Hello? Hello, Grace. Seems we are losing Grace. Grace, can you hear me? Hello? Seems we've lost Grace, but I know this has been an insightful session. I see 3 questions that have come up from Martin, from Real Peters, from Ruby. And these are questions we will share with our lawyer for her to answer. Maybe we could do that in the next session, but we are requesting that you reach us out on our contact. You could call our office on 0728, which is also on the chat, 895, for more clarification, more questions and verification, because some of the questions I see that are being asked, we had covered them in the previous session. But this time I will want to give at least a chance to one or two people. Just unmute yourself and you can say something. You can, ask a question which we will not answer now because of time, but we can actually address it in the next session. So feel free, you can raise your hand, then I will be able to see you and ask you to unmute yourself, and then you can be able to handle the comment or the question. Anyone who feels like they want to say something?
I'm back. Sorry about that.
Sorry, okay, it's okay.
Yeah, so I was saying it's one of the attractive ways of managing, say, property that attracts income, because then you know that nobody's going to waste these resources which you are leaving to your family. If you have that property in the name of a trust, it can move from generation to generation to generation. And what you do is when you register administered. However, we have also seen where people have registered trusts, but still the property is mismanaged, especially by the trustees. So you want to be sure that the people you are appointing as trustees of your trust are people who are going to administer it in the correct way, and that they are not going to use the wealth which you have left to your family to enrich themselves. For instance, we have seen situations where lawyers and auditors benefit too much from trusts, and the beneficiaries of a trust get very minimal. So it calls for balancing. It calls for balancing, but also remember, you are not going to manage your children when you are gone. You have to have trained them before you go, so that even if you register a trust, you know that they can also administer themselves. They don't need to have a third party out there or a professional out there who is going to charge them an arm and a leg for administering the estate, your estate or your trust.
Awesome.
I hope I have answered sufficiently.
Yes, you have. And I think I will request just if you can briefly answer on this one, because it's totally related to what you were talking about. And then we can address the other questions in the other session because our time is actually over. Okay. And this question is, Martin is asking, I want to raise a question to the lawyer, not related, okay, but wanted to know, can a child place a caveat on a parental or family land with a genuine issue in regards to the caveat, and how much does it cost when engaging a lawyer? I don't know if I asked you got me.
Yes, I have gotten. Anybody who has an interest in a property can place a caveat or a caution, like we call it now. Anybody who has an interest in a parcel of land or some property, doesn't have to be just land, it can also be developed property, can be a house, it can be an apartment. You can place a caution, as long as, or let me use the word caveat because that is what most people know. Yes, you can place a caveat on a property as long as you are able to satisfy the registrar on the reasons as to why you want to do that. Usually there's an application that you make, and there's also an affidavit which you swear, and that affidavit is in the affidavit, that's where you put in the details of your reason for wanting to put a caveat on a property.
Okay.
Again, I will say the cost for not just a caveat or a caution, but any transaction, it's usually on a case-to-case basis, because sometimes you are dealing with a registry that is far off. Sometimes the transaction comes in a different form. A transaction may be placed before you, and when you look at the merits of the matter, you want to persuade the client to first try and pursue mediation with the family. sometimes you may want to place that caution immediately, but the moment the owner of the property knows that the caution has been placed, they come knocking on your door. And now you start another process of negotiating over that transaction and even going to withdraw the caution. So how much it would cost you for a transaction is it differs on a case-to-case basis.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, our lawyer Grace. We truly appreciate and value this invaluable information. We don't take it for granted that we have you giving it to us through Nyota Njema Real Estate. And as a company, we feel that our customers are valuable. And that is why we have asked our lawyer Grace to come on board and just share with us these insights. And we value your time, our valued customers. You're our very, very important persons. Just sit there and just know without you, Nyota Njema cannot be in existence. And we have so many questions, our lawyer Grace. We cannot even exhaust them in this session. I think we will have to sit down with our Nyota Njema real estate team and see how actually to go about these questions and cover as many as possible. But I feel you have really exhausted for us most of them. And for those ones that we have not been able to answer, we are requesting that you on board with us the next session that we'll be having, and I'm sure we will continue to learn. Please feel free to engage and reach us on 0728-895-895. You can also log on onto our website, which is www.nyotanjema.com, and check out what we have. You can visit us at Mountain Mall for those ones who are still around the country, or you have a representative and you really want to know more about Nyota Njema. We are located off Thika Road at Mountain Mall, second floor, office suite 21. We really thank you so much. We don't want to take more of your time, but we request you to engage with us further on all our handles, on our Facebook handle, Instagram. We are also on LinkedIn, on our Twitter handle. We have an email. Just feel free to engage with us and ask as many questions as you could, and we will always forward them to our lawyer. She's able enough to be able to take us through. Thank you so much, Grace, once again. Thank you so much, the Nyota Njema team. Thank you so much for all the clients and all the very important persons who were able to join us this evening. I don't have any other thing. I don't know if, Grace, you have a closing parting shots.
I would also like to express my gratitude to the team that joined this call this evening. I hope you have learned something new, and if not something new, at least you have affirmed what you know or what you imagined, and we look forward to engaging further. And further, feel free to reach out to me, feel free to reach out to the Nyota Njema team if you want to get any clarification on anything. And yeah, take time to learn about what we also offer as G and Kihungi advocates. Thank you so much, Nyota Njema, also for inviting me for this call. I truly appreciate it. And I wish you all a good evening and a good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are joining us from. Thank you.
Awesome. Before we leave, we actually have our CEO, Nyota Njema Real Estate, Mr. Perminus Kariuki. Please just say something to us.
Allow me to use somebody's phone. I was listening in.
All right, Karibu.
So thank you very much for the great session, Wakili Grace, and thank you, Precious, for the great facilitation. I believe that our members, the visitors who are here today, you can share this link to as many people as possible. Let us keep on enlightening people because people perish for lack of knowledge. Let's keep on sharing the information. Information is power. And as I always say, even if you don't invest with us, at least we'll have given you some insights not to make mistakes when investing elsewhere. But our desire is that we may serve all of you, your friends, and your friends' friends. Thank you very much. And I must say, today we have received our certificate as a compliant member of Association of Real Estate Stakeholders to show you that we are indeed doing everything possible to instill investor confidence that indeed in this country there are people who can do the business in the right way, and all of us can enjoy our investment. Investment should not be stressful, and it should be forthright, and that is why, as Nyota Njema Real Estate, we endeavor to enlighten you because that is our motto, lighting up your investment world. Thank you very much. And thank you, Grace, for the great job you have done. Thank you, Precious. I know it's late in the night. And all of you who are able to join us today. As again, I say, share this message to other people. Let us spread the good word, because evil prevail when good people do nothing. And the best time to invest was 10 years ago. The other best time to invest is now. Invest now, so that 10 years to come, you'll be proud of what you did. Thank you, and over to you, Precious.
Thank you very, very much, our CEO, Perminus. He's a great leader and a mentor, and we value you greatly. And thank you so much once again for everyone who just got some time to join us. And I wish you a good night and a good weekend right ahead. Feel free to exit. Asanteni sana.
Thank you.